Schmo, say your name one time for me. Do the. This is the Schmo. Come on, you gotta do it for me one time. This is the Schmo. Oh, yes, there it is. All right. 2, 3, 4.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Schmozone podcast, episode 16. I'm Dave Schmulenson, a.k.a. the Schmo.
And I'm Helen Yee Sports.
Little faster pace for that introduction today. I just want to switch it up from time to time.
Hey, nothing wrong with keeping things interesting and keeping it fresh.
Speaking of keeping it fresh, we are alive. Got back from Jacksonville, Florida on Sunday. It's now Tuesday.
Getting my days mixed up, right?
Yeah, we spent, 11 nights, 12 days in Jacksonville?
Yes.
3 fights and 8 nights. UFC, the first professional sports, MMA, the first professional sports back. UFC being at the forefront. We were a part of history. Good feelings.
Good feelings and great fights.
Amazing fights.
Yeah.
All 3 fights were absolutely just remarkable, and I think the prelims of Saturday's fight night, probably some of the best prelim fights I've seen in a long time.
Oh my gosh, I know. I mean, and I'm excited to talk fights a bit later with our guest today.
Yep, first reoccurring guest on the Schmozone podcast. It's going to be Coach Eric Nicksick of Extreme Couture. What, he went 3 for 3 on?
Yeah. Francis Ngannou, Dan Ige, Claudia Gadelha.
All great fights, all great results. He's got to be feeling pretty damn good right about now.
Yes, and I'm excited to talk to him about the Francis Ngannou, John Jones, of course. But like
we'll
we
get
said,
to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But in Jacksonville, did you enjoy it? Like, did you like the city? It was nice being able to kind of see the river, right?
It was amazing. The St. John's River, I think our hotel, we stayed at the Hyatt Regency Riverfront right along the St. John's River there. It was really nice to wake up and see water every single morning. But we were being quarantined inside of a hotel. But it felt like we could escape a little bit by just being on a trip and some level of normalcy, having a trip, a fight week to cover. But at the same time, it was different because it was still locked down. The restaurants were still, for the most part, I know Florida's pretty lax with some of their social distancing. I mean, they do the 6 feet and everything like that, but their dining, some restaurants were open up. But it was different because it wasn't the same. Everything was locked down. There's very few people out on the streets, and when we did leave the hotel, it was just to walk along the river.
And wearing the face mask the minute we left our hotel room, right?
Yes, wearing our face masks everywhere.
Yeah. Even in the interviews.
Even in the interviews, I had the Schmo shield and the face masks.
Yeah.
It was a good time nonetheless. It was just good to be back and to do what we love and to see some amazing fights and have sports, because we both love sports, right?
Yeah, it truly made my soul happy. So I'm in a great mood.
Yeah. Why not?
Oh, but I do have to say though, because now you're talking about Saturday, the third fight card, your Schmo jacket, that was really cool.
Team Blazers UK, huge shout out to those guys. I think they reached out to me on Instagram maybe about a month and a half ago. They said, look, hey mate, everyone in the UK loves to use the word mate. It's great. Hey mate, we want to make you a Schmo Blazer. Send us your logos, tell us your sizing. So we literally, Helen, I got to give you the credit. You're amazing. We took a tape measure and we just measured my size, and we found out my jacket size with them, because I guess their sizes is a little bit different, how they measure in the UK versus how they would tailor here in the US. Like specific measurements, they wanted like half of my back, and then they wanted a waist. They wanted how it would be when you sit down. So we just guessed, and they shipped it directly to the hotel in Jacksonville, and man, that is the sharpest suit I own to date.
I know. Well, fashion class in high school did come in handy. I did take fashion 1 and 2, and I know a little bit about sewing and whatnot. But yeah, if you haven't seen David, or the Schmo's jacket. It is freaking awesome. Check it out it's on your...
It's on my Instagram.
Instagram, but you didn't post, or, I mean, I'm sure you could post it later on, but the back of the jacket...
Yes.
That was really cool. It's like a huge Schmo
Helen,
photo.
it's safe to say it's not going to be the only time I ever wear that jacket. We'll get a lot of use on it.
Yeah, that's true.
And they've already hit me up. They do waistcoats. They do more designs. They're already going to make more. But, I mean, I was intrigued by them because they did a tribute to Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, and it was amazing. And they just, they said, hey, what do you think? And then I just threw a couple of ideas. They threw a couple of ideas. They made it work. They made it happen. I love that it was purple, by the way. And ironically, Bruce Buffer, the legend, was wearing purple that night. Might be one of the few times the Schmo actually had a better blazer, better coat than a Bruce Buffer at a fight card.
Well, when you see it and see your face on it everywhere, I guess, it's kind of hard to beat that, right?
It's cool. I think I said this before in an earlier podcast, but if you were to say to me 5-6 years ago, what are you going to be the rest of your life? I knew I'd be in sports. I knew I'd be in sports journalism, but I really didn't know I'd be the Schmo. And what would the Schmo look like and everything? It's like, hey, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm the Schmo.
Yeah. Not a Schmo, the Schmo.
The Schmo, exactly. We're all Schmos, right? But overall, I am a blessed human. I am a blessed Schmo. I feel very fortunate that I'm in this position where you get companies reaching out to you on Instagram to make custom Schmo gear. Love it. And I'm very, very lucky, and I'm very, very grateful.
But you did just say if a few years ago, if someone were to tell you X, Y, and Z, but speaking of that and kind of looking ahead, what's your thoughts? I mean, and especially during this pandemic and moving forward from it, the future of journalism.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot, but I just think regardless if we had this pandemic or not, inevitably journalism was changing. We're in this digital age. The thing that really sucks about getting all this information so quickly, which is the amazing part, it's that it's not about who is right, it's about who's first. People are scrambling to be first to get something out there, and that's kind of the culture that this modern day journalism has created, whereas, okay, you get it out first, but you're not fact checking. You're not checking if something's right. It's, okay, let's put something out there, we'll get the ratings, and then if we're wrong, okay, we could just, keep that monetization, we could keep those ratings, but then we can release the next day, hey, we were wrong. There's no consequences for being wrong, and that's what really irks me. I think speed's important, but I think integrity should never be jeopardized for speed. And I think that's a huge problem in journalism. Pre-COVID-19, post-COVID-19, that's an issue. And that's something that needs to be addressed. But in terms of the future of it, we're seeing expedited layoffs. It's not like Sports Illustrated and specifically sports journalism. Sports Illustrated, ESPN, Fox Sports, they've all had their layoffs. I remember it was a few years ago, Fox Sports just... they fired all of their writers and they just focused on short-term digital video. I know ESPN's had layoffs. Obviously, Sports Illustrated has had layoffs, all these companies. And I think you have the old dinosaurs mentality, the people that have rejected you and I in the sports industry for so long, so reluctant to change, and the same old TV, old age model and how to present something. And people are so tight living on the way they're accustomed to. They're afraid of the change. They're afraid of doing something different. And I think they're forcing everything. So I think the future of journalism partially is what we're doing. It's, okay, how can you adapt? How can you be quick? How can you be unique? How can you get more information out there, but show integrity and authenticity?
But a lot of people told me years ago when I was trying to break into it, and I ended up having to create my own show because no one gave me a chance. But during that time, a lot of people said, jobs in sports, it's very rare, right? And more rare to have a full-time job. But just breaking into sports is so hard, sports journalism. So now, through this pandemic and moving forward into the future, do you think that jobs in sports journalism will become even more rare? Or is this a good opportunity that people can create and utilize the digital era?
Yeah, I think with all these jobs in sports, it comes down to sponsorship dollars. It comes down to brand dollars. How can they monetize? If you're going to have a TV show, if you're going to have a digital show, you're going to need sponsors. You're going to need to have an audience. You're going to have numbers. And sponsors are going to want to be a part of that program. And it's going to be tougher than hell. I mean, look, let's face it. Could I create the Schmo in a post-pandemic world? If I wanted to create this character or a character, any character, call it Bob Zena, random name. I don't know, John Cena, Bob Zena. Let's say I create a character, a Bob Zena character.
Hey, I do. Shout out to pro wrestling fans.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, just kind of brought back the you can't see me.
I said Zena, not Cena, but whatever.
I know.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay,
but if I wanted to create a character, well, it's going to be extremely difficult doing something digitally, virtually, not in person, and to build the integrity. I think a lot of my success is building trust, but building that trust with my work in person, seeing the integrity of who I am, the person underneath the mask, the person underneath the character. A lot of the publicists, a lot of the PR teams, a lot of the executives that make decisions see this in action, and I'm able to win over the fighters and the fans by them seeing that. Well, if you're trying to start something from scratch now, you're going to have to be even more creative. And I think you got to utilize the digital tools. You got to utilize the musics, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Twitters. You have to take that and just spin off of something and do something unique. Like someone like Bob Menery, right? I bring this guy up all the time. Kudos to him. Obviously, no one's given him chances. So he took content. He used his unique voice. I don't know the legalities of actually using that type of content because he doesn't own it, but he does that voice. He does a great damn job doing it. People notice who he is, and then he starts a podcast off of it, just like kind of how we're starting a podcast off of the Schmo character, the Schmo and the Pro, Helen Yee Sports, the brands that we built. You're able to segue into that and take the audience that you have and carry it over. But what's so gratifying about us and a guy like Bob, well, I've had my story with Bob Menery. I actually should bring that up. I can get into that. But from what I know, we're just self-made. You know, all the decision makers, the executives, just didn't want to give us a chance. So we said, screw it. We'll do it our ways. We'll do it better. And as time progresses, we have the youth, we have the technology, the innovation, and the future on our side.
And the motivation, and that does add fuel to the fire.
Outwork us, right? Outwork us.
I know. I always tell people, I will work 25 hours a day if I could. Yeah. 25 hours, 8 days a week if I could.
Someone could be born on third base thinking that they hit a triple, but they still have to run home. They still have to get home to score a run. All right? Are they just going to stop at the triple, or are they going to be like us who goes up to the plate, swings, maybe gets a single, and then steals a base, rugged, head first. You get all the dirt on the mound or on the diamond from you on your uniform, so you scratch and claw, carry over from a sacrifice fly, sac bunt or whatever, get to third base, and you find a way to either steal home or score. You're in the game, and we find a way to bring it home. And that's something that hard work does.
Yes.
And
it's rewarding.
It's a longevity game. It's rewarding.
Yes. I mean, there were plenty of days where I'm sure you and I both have cried, right? I don't know about you, but I've definitely cried a lot. But so what about that Bob Menery story?
Yeah, so Bob Menery, so probably around 2017, or maybe it was early or mid 2018, kind of where in my lowest of lows. I'm living with my brother in San Diego. I'd moved out of my apartment in LA. I had nobody supporting me except my brother, really. I following social media. I'm taking a lot of chances, investing in myself. I saw Bob Menery I think he was living in the East Coast in Boston. He was coming out to LA to do a charity golf tournament with Golden Tate, wide receiver. Mm-hmm. I think he's with the Giants now, but at the time he was with the Lions. Played at Notre Dame, played for Pete Carroll in Seattle. I love my football, if you can't tell. So I think he lives in a wealthy community like Rancho Santa Margarita, somewhere in San Diego, right? Private golf course. So I knew Bob was playing him for charity. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. I bring my iPhone. I bring a little camera that I could stick into my iPhone for audio. And I'm like, look, I'm just going to show up there and be like, look, let's see if the Schmo can broadcast, can interview these guys as they're competing for charity, try to involve myself in the circle. So I sneak in. I got into the gated community. I kind of just said I'm part of the team. I go there. I don't think Golden Tate had showed up yet. I saw Bob. I drove up to the clubhouse. I found it. I scared the shit out of him. I startled him because I show up. I'm dressed in my blue blazer, my funky pants, some of my blue spiky shoes. I'm like, oh, Bob, Menery, this is the Schmo. Good to meet you finally. I got to talk to you. You're doing something with Golden Tate here, huh? Can the Schmo broadcast it? And he was just blindsided because he didn't know who the character was. And, I probably had 10,000 Instagram followers at that time and maybe 1,000 YouTube subscribers at that time. Nobody knew who I was back then. And he startled, he called up the managers and, You
got arrested?
I didn't get arrested. I left, but I still got a little piece with Bob Menery, a little video interview thing that's probably buried in my Instagram somewhere, something small, whatever. He literally called me that night. We got on the phone. He's like, dude, I want you to join my team. I want to do this. I'm like, Bob, I'm not going to join your team, but we can collaborate and work together. It's like, you got no one following you. I'm like, yeah. You were at my point. You and I, at some point, you had 10,000 followers. At some point, you had 50,000 followers. You didn't just get to 2 million followers overnight. It takes consistency. It takes time to build a brand. And over time, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get there. And he's like, no, join my team. I'm like, Bob, I'm not going to join your team, but I'm more than happy to work with you. And that was the last I ever spoke to him.
Wow. That's interesting. And, props to you for getting in there.
Yeah, got in there. It's the same way I'm assuming Barstool Sports and Dave Portnoy, at some point, I could be wrong, I assume they tried to bring in Bob Menery or Bob had reached out to Barstool because those types of brands, sorry, I hit the mic, overlap, really the scorched earth, make fun of everybody and everything. And so the way that situation went, he thought he could, because he's bigger than me at that time and still bigger than me now, a lot bigger than us, say, hey, join my team and stuff like that. It's like, no, man. I'm for you. I support you. I follow you. I find you funny. It's good stuff. But I did say this before. He can't do these highlights and put his name. There's got to be some sort of legality behind it. He's taken highlights from the NFL. The PGA has forced him to take that stuff down. ESPN's forced him to take down the softball stuff. He doesn't own it.
That was my question, too, because you also mentioned how in this digital era and to be different or how to create content, right? But I always wonder I see so many pages, especially on Instagram, where they take content and like repost it or almost like as their own or whatnot. I don't know how any of that stuff works, but
I think it just with the internet, I say this all the time, is like the wild, wild west. I think when it comes to the laws are still catching up to what you can and cannot do on the internet. So I think some stuff gets taken down, some stuff gets missed, gets thrown in the fire. But we bring this up too all the time. It's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission, because if you're someone who's just going to ask, oh, hey, can I use it? Likely if you're good, you have to ask. You pretty much know you can't. And rather than, oh, I didn't know I posted this, I take it down. I think it's something like that. And for his sake and his situation, get the views, get the followers, and if you have to take it down, you comply and you take it down. I don't know how that works. I really don't know, but he's obviously built a good brand for himself, a great brand. People know who he is. He's with A-list celebrities. He's with A-list athletes. Kudos to him. Nothing but support for someone who's self-made. We both know how hard the grind is. So that's why, it's a funny story to an extent. Nothing but respect for him. I'm just not going to join his team.
Yeah, we'll just, I guess, talk about it on here. But speaking of greatness, what did you think of the finale of the Michael Jordan documentary? Yeah,
I tweeted it too. Not just the greatest basketball player of all time, the greatest competitor I've ever seen in my entire life. It's amazing. It definitely lived up to the hype. I wish they could make more bonus episodes. I think Pau Gasol tweeted, hey, can we get more behind-the-scenes footage? I think they said they had 10-plus hours of footage. I said this from the beginning. Jordan got the stage that he very much deserved. He's the greatest basketball player of all time. There was no other sports going on aside from the UFC, but they don't do fights on Sunday nights. So that had the platform Sunday night, every single night for 2 hours. The ratings showed for it. What I get the justification in seeing, it's like, in college, I heard growing up in Chicago and then going to Arizona, and all my friends from Arizona or California, where I went to college at the University of Arizona in Tucson, they're like, oh, Kobe Bryant's the greatest basketball player I've ever seen. He's the greatest of all time. Now that we'll get to LeBron in a second, but it's like Kobe this, Kobe that. I'm like, dude, Kobe's just a half-assed version of Jordan. No, he's not half-assed, but Kobe Bryant's a top 10, top 8 player of all time. He's the next best thing to Jordan, but he's not Michael Jordan. He's not better than Michael Jordan. And then when it comes to LeBron James, all these kids who've never seen Michael Jordan play, oh, LeBron's the greatest. Yeah, he's the greatest basketball player of this generation, but it's better to argue is who's better, LeBron James or Kobe Bryant? Whereas who's better, LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Why are you skipping Kobe Bryant in that conversation? That's a better argument to make. I
don't disagree with that. And will there ever be another Dennis Rodman?
I don't know.
Did you see? Because was that the finale episode or episode 9? Or?
But just think about like how those teams are constructed and where they're found. Like how often do you get basketball players in this modern era? Because these kids are fed, and this comes to my journalism days when I worked for USA Today. I would go to these Nike Elite 11 football camps. I would call up the SIDs of small college basketball conferences. So I was in the college basketball scene. I was in the high school basketball recruiting scene 4 or 5 years. And these kids are spoon-fed since the age of 10 or 12. All that stuff with Adidas and the lawsuits, these guys get free meals, they get benefits, they get paid to go to college. This is happening in football and basketball, the biggest money-making sports in college. You're delusional if you think otherwise, right? But think about Dennis Rodman, who... They have a documentary. If you haven't seen it, you have Netflix. Go to watch the Dennis Rodman documentary. But he went to southeastern Oklahoma State, like a small D2 or D3 school, not a Division I school. And Scottie Pippen, Central Arkansas. These guys don't come from major programs. I know in football, it's more of a sport where, hey, they'll find you anywhere. But when it comes to professional basketball, it's very rare these days that you don't take kids that went to Duke or North Carolina, Syracuse, some of these Kansas, some of these powerhouse programs, Kentucky's, or they're now going to, I guess, the G League, the NBA Developmental League, or they're playing in Europe or Australia, overseas for a year or two. But they're not coming from these small schools. So to answer your question, for Dennis Rodman ever again, someone who's arguably the greatest rebounder of all time, one of the best defensive presence of all time, Hall of Famer, amazing person, late bloomer. Personality. Carmen Electra still looks great, by the way.
She
That's
does.
A huge doc. That from the documentary.
Shout out to her.
Amazing.
She was really nice when I interviewed her.
Yeah, you've interviewed Carmen Electra?
I did. It was probably one of my first times on camera doing like an on-camera interview was it 2016, I want to say? Early 2016, yeah. So I interviewed her World MMA Awards, and she was really nice.
And
like,
it's on your YouTube?
So, like, beautiful, yeah. She's like, she looked very just, like, perfect. I'm like, okay.
Did you break the camera lens with too much beauty in one shot between the both of you, or what?
No, I mean, she probably did, but yeah. But she was just super nice. A lot of memories from, like, that World MMA Awards. And, like, Tony Ferguson and stuff, and...
Yeah, I did my first one this summer, and that was the day I had their surgery on my neck. I had that humongous cyst in my neck removed, and I'm on pain medicine. The most amount of interviews I ever did in my life, and that one day in July, we did that. That was the day of the MMA Awards.
I know. Yeah.
So you crushed it.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, no, and why I bring that up, because I remember, interviewing them. It was, again, like one of my first times. If not, was that my first time on camera? I mean, feels like forever ago now, but I remember like Tony Ferguson was one of my first interviews too, and he was super nice.
Yeah, I know you have a good relationship then with him and his wife. She came up and gave you a huge hug at the hotel. I think before and after his fight.
Yeah, she's awesome, Christina.
Yeah, so. But it just, for someone like him though, I mean, do you think, regardless of the result, and clearly, he lost that fight, do you think that his his aura and his personality gets even bigger from that loss and from that situation at UFC 249 than it was prior to.
Yeah, he does seem like someone who will be back stronger, no doubt, 1,000,000%. And I'm sure most of us, right, who are following like MMA or whatnot, follow Tony Ferguson. So I've seen like his Instagram posts, and I mean, it looks like he's been trying to get back into it quick. I did speak to his boxing coach, Rashad Holloway, days after, and when I saw Tony that night at the hotel, he gave me a hug, and he seemed to be in great spirits. So I have no doubt that he'll definitely be back.
CSO, champ shit only. He seems to live by that, regardless of the result. You know, he's still the same upbeat person.
Yes.
He's still going to train in his ferocious style. And I think the mentality is there. I don't think he'll lose it. And I think the popularity is only going to grow. The legendary status is only going to grow. I mean, the fact that he did 2 weight cuts in less than 30 days, I'm still blindsided by that. That's why I did ask, I think, Justin Gaethje at the post-fight press conference, hey, you know, if that would affect your performance. And he said he can't speak for Tony, but he could speak for himself, that it would have affected him. That's pretty telling.
That was a great question, because also how Justin comes from that wrestling background.
Yeah. And we're going to bring in our next guest for the podcast in 2 seconds. I just want to say this before we bring in Coach Eric Nicksick, who probably had the best week of any coach, going for 3 for 3. But I do want to say, I think we started the podcast with it, the Kevin Holland throwing the shots. I was blindsided by the people at the press conference that were, you know, I wasn't, you know, it's late. We're on the East Coast. It's 2 a.m. You're like, hey, say something, do something in the Schmo character. I wasn't on my game. So I do want to point that out.
Hey, doesn't matter. We all have good days and bad days. And it was like 1 a.m. and we're still kind of on, you know, different time zone. But yeah, you know, I love that even like Glover Teixeira, this wasn't caught on camera, but after his press conference, he's like, I love you, Schmo. So it's great to see, you know, just the Schmo brand continue to grow, and I'm very proud of it.
No support of the major networks. It's rewarding. It's rewarding, and but I love seeing your hustle. I love that we're doing this together. And without further ado, let's bring in Coach Eric Nicksick. He made the long drive from Extreme Couture to be here today. Coach.
What's up, guys?
I know we've all been tested rigorously.
Oh, I know, right?
Congrats on everything.
Thank you.
Crazy week, right?
Crazy week. Crazy, 11 days?
Yeah, wait, so did you fly back here and then fly back there?
No, I stayed.
Okay.
Yeah, I stayed. I didn't think there was any good reason to come back home. And it was really only going to be a day. So it was kind of nice because some of the bars had opened up. So I was like, all right, we're going out Sunday. You know, so we found a couple spots. It was good.
Yeah.
Did you go to sleep Sunday evening? Or Saturday evening?
Yeah, barely. Yeah, we slept, and then the guys had to get up kind of early to catch their flight home. So so I got up and said bye to those guys, but then I was wide awake. Yeah, I was wide awake.
So we're 16 episodes into this thing, and you're the first reoccurring guest. I just thought it would be appropriate. I think it would just be appropriate because you had such an amazing week, and it started from the very beginning, from 249, and then through UFC Jacksonville to UFC Florida. I mean, you were there the entire time.
Yeah.
Man, let's say out of Claudia, Dan, and Francis, they're all impressive. But who was the most impressive for you of those 3? Performance that kind of, you know, extra proud of, you know?
Well, I would have to say Dan, just because of the short notice and then the level of competition with Edson Barboza and what we had to deal with. You know, I was fortunate enough to corner against Edson in the Kevin Lee fight, so I did have 8 weeks to prepare for him in that particular fight. So a lot of the blueprint I try to carry over into Dan, but executing it and, you know, putting that together for him and then 2 different body types was tough. And we knew what we were getting into with Edson. So, you know, fortunately that decision went our way. It was a great scrap either way. Any way that was going to go, I was so proud of Dan and the way he fought. So it didn't matter to me.
But curious to get your thoughts. Speaking of Edson, and like you said, you cornered against him with Kevin Lee. What did you think about how he looked at featherweight?
I thought it looked amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought, and we prepared for that. You know, we would get a lot of like, well, what happens when he misses weight and this? And I'm like, dude, this guy's a pro. He's been at this for a long, long time. And we need to prepare for the best Edson Barboza that we're ever going to see. And because if you don't do that, you're selling yourself short. And I thought he looked amazing, you know, and I hope he stays at 145. I think that's a great weight class for him.
So it's not an MMA fight or MMA event without fans and controversy. Oh, he won, he didn't win. A lot of people took to social media and like, oh, Edson Barboza won that fight, he was robbed and stuff like that. And it wasn't the only fight. There's a bunch of other fights, especially on that Saturday evening. Just curious to get your thoughts. Did you think he did enough to win the fight? Were you nervous at all when they went to the judges' scorecard? How did you feel about it before the results were announced?
To be honest with you, I was at peace with everything, and I think the product that we put out was up to the judges, and he fought his ass off, and then everything else is left up to them, and all we need is the opinion of two. And they thought that Dan did enough to win that second round. Round 3 was ours, round 1 was his, and round 2 was the round in question. I felt like Dan did enough those first 4.5 minutes, and then he got hit with a little bit of a body shot and ended up on his back. But you know, you can argue both sides of it, and at the end of the day, they're both high level competitors that laid it out there, and then it's the opinion of 3 judges that matter. That's really it. So unfortunately, that happens in this game, and it's part of the sport that we all love. It's just it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, what I noticed too is he finished the fight a lot stronger. That round 3 was a huge, and I think that definitely weighed into the minds of the decision makers, to the judges. But talk to me about that first round, because he got rocked, and he withstood a lot of adversity. What was it like in the transition from round 1 to round 2, and what did you guys say to him? How did he catch his bearings? Because that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, so he gets dropped, I think maybe like 40 seconds into the first round, and then Edson just lays on some really, really good ground and pound. And really for us, it was just to remain calm, to control posture, to alleviate some of the ground and pound and get your wits about you. And once he did, and he kicked him off and got back to his feet, and Dan just went straight Dan Hawaiian on him. And he closed the gap in round 1. Although Edson did drop him, that round was going to go to him. But if you rewatch the fight, Dan really closed it up really well. So the way the round 1 ended, I knew we had a fight on our hands. I knew we were there.
50K, Dan Ige. Where was the 50K?
I thought so. I mean, I thought it was fight of the night, but you guys were there and saw every fight. We didn't get to see them the same way you guys did. And if there's any controversy at all, I feel like that's the moment that Dana White could have said, okay, well, I felt like Edson might have won, or it was close enough. That's a way to reward a guy, you know, give him fight of the night, because, I mean, that was, in my opinion, that was the fight of the night.
Yeah, that was a great fight. But curious to also get your thoughts on, you know, you were at so many of those fights. What did you think of no fans in attendance and just, you know?
I loved it. And you guys know me. I'm very thorough and trying to make sure that we check all the boxes. And that's something that we prepared for all camp long with Francis. We didn't spar with any music on. We had to make sure as a corner that we were very deliberate in the coaching, having codes. And then I made sure that we had another coach that was almost pandering to the judges. So, you know, if I was saying like, oh man, that looked good, or that wobbled them, and literally directing that conversation to the judges. So we planned for this, and I think that was part of the execution and what we did in the Dan fight and what I try to do in Claudia fight with Coach Mark Henry. You know, I was the third in that corner, so I was really amping it up for the judges, and that was my role. So that's what we prepared for, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't running over top of each other. We weren't sounding like a discombobulated corner, because that was really was gonna get shined.
So we're all kind of like quarantined in the hotel at the Hyatt, and we're all in there together, not just like the fighters, but the coaches, but the referees. What was it like going up on the elevators, up and down, and seeing your opponent, seeing everything? Because I feel like in these 11 days, it was more of an overlap of running into the competition and the opposing sides than pretty much anything at any other time.
Yeah, honestly, I really didn't see a whole lot of people. Like I saw you guys a couple times, but I didn't run into Edson at all. I didn't run into Jarzinho or really anybody for competition-wise. Maybe Angie, I saw her once, but I did see like the refs, and I did see them. But for the most part, I feel like, I mean, I stayed in my room for the most time. played Call of Duty. You know? Yeah, I just hit out really, and then we worked out, and then that was it. Yeah.
And then they had, and everyone had like their individual pods too for cutting weight. I kind of went in the back and saw that, just get my own eyes to that. Sanitation was there, the testing and everything like that. Pretty much like, how would you kind of grade your overall experience doing that? Like, is that something you can get used to for the remainder of the year? Like, and just kind of what would be your advice to do it again for yourself and maybe to other coaches that are listening to the podcast?
Honestly, I thought they did a great job. I really did, and I thought they were very thorough. I didn't feel like I was like, oh man, I'm at risk at any point. You know, even with the Jacare thing, I never even saw Jacare when I was there, so I felt that they did their best job that they could, and in a way, I'm glad something did kind of happen because it made them like reset. Okay, how do we adjust? And then that's what they did. So for any of the coaches, I think when you come out there, just know that like you're going to get about an hour and a half to get your guy wrapped, get him warmed up, and then you're out there. That was probably just the I'd say biggest change. Like you always say, I was
going to ask you about that.
Hurry up and wait. You know, you get there like, why am I here for so long, and why did we get here so early? And you don't have that luxury anymore of time of just kind of messing around. It was very diligent. Get there, get you wrapped up, and let's get warmed up, and now you're scrapping. You know, so that was a big difference.
But what about Francis? I mean, obviously the talk of the town right now, and Francis John Jones. Yeah. Kind of what's been really happening behind the scenes about that?
I mean, that just got legs quick, I think, you know, and I mean, credit to John. No one's calling Francis out. No, I mean, really no one. And I don't think there's any better fight out there. I mean, you can argue that he's the pound for pound number one. He's the GOAT. And that is a title fight in my opinion. Right. So it is.
That's what you brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you this. It's like, do you have to potentially put an interim title fight on the line to make that work? Because we're sitting here waiting for Stipe and DC. Obviously, we're going to get some sort of commitment to know if, hey, is this going to happen end of summer, early fall? What's going to be the situation? It seems like Dana and some of the matchmakers are kind of putting pressure behind the scenes. Do you think it would only make sense to kind of make that fight an interim title fight?
I think it does, depending on the timing. So if they say, hey, look, we don't see DC and Stipe fighting until September, October, but we can get this fight off in July, then I would put an interim on it. If you could get them on the same card, maybe, but I would like to, I think Francis and John for 5 rounds is a must, you know?
Francis weighed in, I think, at like 261. Could be off by a pound or two. What does he normally walk around at? What is he cutting weight to?
We don't cut any weight at all, but we started camp at 271. And then our goal, what I wanted him to be, was 255. 255. And then with the pandemic and then everything kind of in and out, I actually talked to Luke Thomas. I think it was like 2 weeks before the fight, and we weighed in, he was 256. So we were right where we wanted to be, but again, it's like then you add in the flight, you add in the water load and all that other stuff too. And we weren't cutting any weight at all, so I think we weighed 262. But athletically, where I'd like to see him at as far as like movement and volume and what we can do, yeah, I'd say 260, 255 would be a good spot for him.
So if you get the John Jones fight, John would probably be. I can't see John being more than 235 at heavyweight. Yeah. So like. Would that still be, would you try to be less than 260, 255 if you're Francis? Like, I'm just kind of get your thoughts. I mean, maybe you haven't put enough thought into it yet because we got to see if it materializes. But do you think his current fight weight and don't fix what's already not broken, or would you kind of adapt a little bit?
I think you have to adapt a little bit still. And as you've seen his body, especially this time around, I got a lot of people writing me because we implemented a lot of more MMA cardio rounds this camp, and we had 14 weeks to do it. So you saw his body composition change a lot. He was cut up more, a little bit more muscular, I think, in those regards. And I think it would be important to make sure that you're just in really, really good shape, really good shape for a guy like John. So I would like to see him at 255, to be honest with you.
But has the UFC talked to you guys about that yet, or?
I don't know. I talked to Francis about it. He's like, brother, what do you think? I was like, it's a chess match, and we, you have to fight this dude like you're playing chess. And this guy, I think one of the biggest things with John is he's probably, which is very much overlooked, is how good his chin is and how good his defense is. I mean, he's very good, unbelievable all around. I think that gets overlooked on just really, really how good his defense is.
And he's got the wrestling background.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine he's going to want to stand there, right there, and trade. He's going to be elusive. He's going to test the cardio of
sure.
Francis. So let's walk back a couple of years ago, because Francis looked indestructible until he had the Stipe fight.
Correct.
And then Stipe kind of exposed some things with his wrestling and, putting all of his weight on him on the back of his neck and holding him down there. Francis couldn't do what he does best.
Right.
And it was a huge learning experience from him. And then maybe some argue that there was some hesitancy in the Derek Lewis fight because of what happened with Stipe, but he's definitely got his mojo back now. And if John fights him, he's going to want to kind of look at some of those strategies with Stipe.
Sure.
So my question to you is, go back a couple of years ago to that Stipe fight and then fast forward to where we are now. What's been the biggest adjustments in that game? And then if somebody comes at him from a wrestling technical background, what will Francis do to prevent anything remotely like the Stipe thing from happening again?
A lot of it's just building the confidence and understanding and putting yourself in that fire. We talked about this before, and I'll use the same analogy, is when you look at something like the Stipe fight or anything that has to do with your career, all of us, there's a boogeyman that lives under the bed, right? And every once in a while you have to look at that boogeyman and identify that and then start fixing those holes. And sooner or later, that boogeyman becomes one of your biggest allies. So if you're scared of your cardio, well, let's dive into that shit. Let's start making that part of our ally rather than our biggest fear. So was the approach that I had with him. Especially, we sat and talked. Hey man, how did you feel about this fight? Well, here's what I did wrong. Here's what I didn't do, and let's not make that same mistake again. Because look, you fight a guy like John Jones. He is the GOAT. And he has a great camp behind him. He has a lot of good people, and he's won this many fights not just because by accident. He's damn good at it. So we're gonna have to really check all those boxes, because it's gonna be a war.
But when, ideally for you, would you like to see Francis fight again?
Obviously,
Fight Island,
fight anything really. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
we did a 14-week training camp, right? Maybe even a little bit longer. So we were able to do a whole lot this camp, and we didn't want to waste that time. We didn't waste that time at all. So really, the camp to me was the most important part, which was our growth in between that time. And it is tough because you hear all the naysayers. Well, he is putting in a lot of the work behind the scenes. You're just not able to see it. He's not. You don't get to see the wrestling that he's doing and all the other work that he's been putting in, because he's going out and putting guys away. It's easy to say that, but if we can fight, I'd like to get back in there, late June, early July. That was the pace.
And that would be ideal, but even after the fight, he kind of mentally was prepared, hey, I might be sitting on the sidelines for 9 months, because there really isn't a fight that makes sense for him at heavyweight unless it's for the title fight, unless it's, DC or Stipe, and we got to wait for those guys as it stands. But then you throw in John Jones's name in there, and that throws a whole monkey wrench to everything. So let me ask you, is there any other name out there other than those three that would even be worth fighting for?
I don't think so. I don't think you do anything else, and I don't think you risk your number one spot, because that's it. You nailed it. So by all signs, DC, this is his last fight, and he's going to retire. So win or lose, that catapults you right into the title fight with either Stipe or John Jones, whoever it may be at that heavyweight position. And and John Jones is a super fight. It's a big money fight. So you got to think what makes most sense financially too. So, and I think John is very smart with his approach on it as well. He's gonna command a lot of the money, and we get to kind of hop in and piggyback on that. So we're fine with either.
But what about Dan Ige? Where does he go from here?
I want that kid to take a rest.
Yeah,
just rest.
Yeah,
a little
he
bit,
deserves
man.
it.
Yeah, so obviously we fought in February against Mirsad Bektik, another great fight. And then with Edson, I think we need to let things shake out over the summer. I'd like to see him possibly get scheduled maybe late August, early September. That was what we talked about on the plane, and kind of see where that featherweight division shakes itself out from here on out. There's a lot of really good guys in that division. It's super stacked, so I think just waiting to see what happens from here.
And what about Claudia? I know after she mentioned she wants to run it back with Carla. So is that something you'd want to see?
That's going to be really up to her and Ali, if that makes sense for her. But that was a great fight too when she fought Carla with controversy as well. So Claudia's split time with us, and she's out in New Jersey quite a bit. So I think if that's something that she wants to do, and now that we're like working together a little bit, I think it's a great fight for her. I love Carla, man. I love the way she fights. I'm a huge fan of hers, and Angie as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I like watching both those girls a lot. So I think that's a great fight for Claudia, to be honest.
So part of fight week also is you're getting in there, you're holding mitts for a lot of different people, whether it's other fighters, other managers. Outside of your team over at Extreme Couture, like, I mean, who have you had the most fun holding mitts for the past 2 weeks? Because I know you've been doing it with a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, you know, I held pads for James Krause. That dude just has cardio for days.
They were jumping on James Krause in his corner, man.
It was tough.
Yeah,
it was tough, and you never want to see your colleagues get lambasted like that. And I've known James a long time. We spoke about what kind of happened in the corner, what I saw, and I think to me, because of the crowd noise, there being no crowd noise, you have to have a clear line of who's the number one or the head coach in that corner. And if it's James, it's James. If it's Coach Montoya, then it needs to be Coach Montoya. And it looked like there was just a little too much going on in that corner for me. And then, you know, you never want to see one of your, and Mark's one of the greatest guys you're ever going to meet, man. You never want to see guys get ridiculed for not stopping the fight. If I was in his shoes, I might have just asked a little bit more questions, like, hey, man, what do you think about this or that? Or got more answers out of Anthony, and then gone and made my decision from there. But, you know, he had to do what he had to do. The best analogy that I can give, sometimes when you're looking down the gun barrel, you have your eyes set on a sight and a target. Sometimes you got to pull your eyes off the target and look at the whole landscape and understand what the whole environment looks like, because your center focus is on that one target. And that's what it looked like to me. He was in tunnel vision at the moment. So
is the responsibility just as much on the referee as it is in the corner? I know it's different than boxing, and we were talking about this too. It's in boxing, it's a ring. You can easily throw in a towel.
Correct.
It's a much easier visual. If you're gonna throw in a towel in MMA, what do you gotta lift it, throw it all the way over an octagon in a cage?
Well, technically, you can't even do that.
Yeah.
You have to tell the commissioner behind you. You tell the commissioner would stand up and wave it off. So,
it's different.
It's different.
That's where I'm going at.
It's very, very different. You're right. So I know Herzog very well, and I am absolutely elated every time that he walks in the locker room and says, hey, I got you guys. And I think he's one of the best referees there is. Now, there's an importance to this too. So, and I know Jason very well as far as his refereeing. If he says a command, he says, fighter, you need to move, and you move and you obey that command, he can't stop the fight right there. He just asked you to do something and you did as you were told. So now if he stops the fight, then there's going to be a legitimate complaint by the fighter, you know. So you can argue the fact it could have been stopped earlier, right? I mean, it's all subjective at that time, but I know for a fact if he's saying, hey man, you got to move here, you have to improve your position, and you're doing all those things, you are intelligently defending yourself, right? So in my opinion, I think there was just it just ended up looking bad, man, and it could happen to any one of us, you know. I had to stop Vinny Magalhães' fight in PFL. It sucked. It was for $1 million, right? And we've all been there. It's not an envious situation to be in, but I'm super empathetic towards Coach Mark and James, because those guys are very talented coaches.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, what's your thoughts on Dominick Cruz and his criticism towards Keith Peterson?
I think it was shit. I think you can have a problem with the stoppage. Right? There's no issue with that. But to jeopardize the man's integrity, I don't like that. I think Keith Peterson's equally as talented referee, and he always smells like cigarette smoke, because like the dude smokes cigarettes. That's what happens, and he's probably under the bleachers smoking cigarettes. But to say that he smelled like alcohol and cigarettes and this, and to throw his reputation under the bus for, you know, a stoppage that you didn't agree with, I didn't think that was cool.
Yeah, neither did Herb Dean when I interviewed him too.
True, yeah.
And the other thing though too is they're all wearing gloves and everything's being sanitized. So the alcohol smell could be from hand sanitizer, just as equal it is from that.
It's a great point, and you have to give a guy who's been involved in this sport such a long time credibility in knowing that the dude wasn't out drinking before your fight, bro. We know that he probably was smoking because he's a smoker, you know, and. I remember he cornered our fight in PFL when Lance fought for $1 million, and he came in the room, and he was around the corner smoking a heater and came walking right in. It's like, yeah, the dude's gonna smell like smoke, but you know what? He's a damn good ref.
Yeah, No question about it too. It's up to the fighter too to not put themselves in a position where someone has to make a decision for them.
And to Dom's credit, I do appreciate that him saying that later on. He's like, hey, had I not been there, this wouldn't have been the situation. But I think with the emotions and the gravity of what happened in that moment, maybe he just said it and didn't really think about really what the actions were going to cause and the domino effect to it. We got a nice parody Twitter account out of it though, Keith Peterson Twitter.
Oh, that Twitter account. Oh my gosh.
Like, this guy's great.
Yeah. Hey, any early
So funny.
inklings of location of Fight Island? We've been trying to press Dana for a week and a half. Is it going to be in the Atlantic, the Pacific? Is it really an island? Is it Costa Rica? Like, we're trying to figure this out.
I just know it's going to be SPF 100 for me because I'm going to burn bad wherever it's going to be. Just no mosquitoes, man, because I'm going to get tore up. I haven't heard anything at all, to be honest. I don't think that's ever really going to come around, to be quite honest.
You don't think they're
Fight
actually...
Island?
I just don't think so, because I think slowly things are going to start opening up. We're going to, I think they're going to have access to the Apex here soon. And then if Arizona's offering to let us fight and let us go there, why ship everybody to an island just out of nostalgia,
Yeah.
So let's just do it in Arizona.
I think you're probably checking Twitter right now because we're gonna know today, maybe tomorrow, if it's gonna be here at the Apex on the May 30th or it's gonna be in Arizona. But certainly June and moving forward, all the U.S. fights are gonna be here. But where I come from with the island stuff, it's Dana mentions, we're gonna run out of. He's gonna burn through his U.S. roster. He needs to have a location for where these people are gonna fight. The international fighters are gonna fight, and the other countries are kind of locked down. Like, I think the Dublin card was the last one standing. It's now been canceled.
Right.
That was in August. They had to cancel UFC 251 in Perth. So they need a location for the international fighters.
For sure. And you're right. Let's see how it all pans out. But, I just think there's so many logistics that you're going to have to get through to get it to happen. By then, who knows what's going to be. Maybe you can get guys here and not have to worry about doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
2020 so unpredictable.
I'm down for Fight Island. I mean, I'm down for it. Let's go.
So now that we got the Raiders coming in town too, you work with some of the football guys too, because I know like Shaq's even gone on record saying, "Hey, his 3 championship titles are because he trained MMA, or the 3 with the Lakers initially." Like, any of the Raiders guys coming through?
They've been hitting us up quite a bit, and want to know when we're opening and we're gonna get going again. So we're actually good friends with Jay Glazer, which has been a great connect for the Raiders for us. So once we get up and running, we're going to do it. Because back when we almost first opened, around that time, we had Patrick Willis. We had some really, really good guys coming in and training with us during the offseason. I felt like Patrick Willis could have carried right over and fought in MMA. Like, he was unreal.
Patrick Willis was a beast, and a lot of people, I think he retired at 30 or something.
Yeah,
he retired
very
early in football, and I'm a diehard Bears fan. I remember it during his heyday. It's like Brian Urlacher, Ray Lewis, Patrick Willis. Those are the 3 best middle linebackers.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, he was a beast. Our first podcast guest, Max Crosby, he was a rookie. I think he had 10 sacks last year.
Yeah.
You guys with the ginger beards, you guys kind of look alike. I could see you
I
guys
like
getting
that
somewhere
kid.
together. He's
Yeah,
good.
he's
I like
cool.
that kid.
He's a big MMA fan
Is
too.
he?
Yeah.
Was he Northern Colorado? Is that where he went?
I think Northern Michigan.
Northern Michigan.
He's a Michigan kid.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I think it's Northern
Maybe
Michigan.
right.
I
Yeah.
could check.
Yeah.
It could be Northern Colorado, but I
don't
know
know.
he's
I just
from
like the
Michigan.
kid. I just remember the kid playing with his hair on fire, and I like that.
I like him too. So are you a Raiders fan then?
I am
Because-
now. I was, so I was a season ticket Chargers guy for a long time. My folks lived in San Diego, and then once they moved, I just kind of like, and then, but we were, obviously Raiders were our big rival. Growing up, my favorite player was Jack Tatum. He was one of the hardest hitting safeties to ever live, and I just love watching that guy play. And so I was always kind of a Raider fan.
More
I
than
guess.
Ronnie Lott though, harder safety.
I mean, there's Ronnie Lott and there's Jack Tatum, in my opinion. Those two were some of the
Ed Reed?
Ed Reed can bang, but I'm telling you,
Troy
bro,
Polamalu can bang.
Troy can bang, but you plug in some of those Jack Tatum hits, and back then it was where you're allowed to kill dudes. He paralyzed the guy,
Yeah.
I mean, the guy can crack. So yeah, he was one of my favorites. So that Raiders mystique was one of my favorite things. So I'm glad they're coming.
The Autumn Wind. I sing
Autumn
that
Wind,
from
yeah.
time
Oh,
to
you
time.
love singing that.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the best football jingles of all
Yeah,
time.
for sure.
It's-
And their stadium looks sick.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And
Especially at night too.
it's gonna be awesome. So
my
being
gosh.
born and raised in Vegas, never really think that this
Yeah,
was gonna be for
me
us,
too.
right? It's like, all right, now we got teams. This
I
is
know.
great.
I'm like, is this real life?
Yeah, exactly.
It's I mean,
And Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, I never knew, I never thought that Vegas would have, even growing up as a child, I never thought that Vegas would have professional sports. And then in the past few years, having the Golden Knights, having hockey, they do summer league here. Pretty soon we're gonna USA basketball. We're gonna have a basketball team here. That's what I think. In the next few
the big
years.
beef was always just because of the gaming.
Yeah,
the sports book and the gaming, and everything's gonna get fixed, and this is that, and then I just don't think it's ever really been conceivable. So, having this here is going to be huge for us, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, I mean, our sponsor is for this podcast is mybookie.ag.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
look, there it is. Throw it up there. I mean, we got to plug it up there because look. At least sports are back on and we can gamble on it, and it's legal to gamble on it, and there's MMA fights to gamble on. So I
would have loved to seen those numbers for the last couple weeks for MMA betting. Just all the guys just firing on something.
They're like, yes.
Yeah. So they work with us. You match up to 50% of what you put in $1,000. So that means every time this guy is got someone that he's cornering, bet on this guy because he went 3 for 3.
I know. Parlay.
It's crazy, man. It's a really good coach told me one time, you get 24 hours to celebrate, you get 24 hours to cry, but you're back to work on Monday. So it's nice. It's nice to come home and ride that momentum, but it's MMA, man. The sport's so fickle at times, and you just can always be on the other side of that. So
for sure. Have you obviously had the devastating loss right before it all kind of transpired, but have you talked to Kevin at all? I know he had to get the surgery, and how's he doing? Kevin
pretty
Lee.
much talked to him like every week. We FaceTimed a bunch, and he was very instrumental in kind of rehashing some of the camp stuff we did with Edson Barboza. We FaceTimed right after Francis's fight, and it's important that during this time, especially we've all been in quarantine right now, and then now he's really in quarantine. He can't do anything at all, and he's stuck. So just the family and the team kind of rallying around him and checking in on him, I think is very important. So he's doing good. He's in good spirits. But, he's my boy, man. We still razz him. You got to.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
No, I was giving you the opportunity.
No, I mean...
You're just wearing your favorite sky blue shirt today?
Well, I had to match the background, right?
Yeah. We had some upgrades to the studio since you came by.
I love it, man. Looks great in here.
Oh, and you matched that background.
Yeah,
See?
the maroon.
I planned that because I did that last time.
Color coordinate.
That's right.
Yeah. I guess my final fight question for you too is any fighters you have upcoming on the radar that we should know about here first, so everyone listening could kind of keep an eye on, keep under wraps, because I think we've highlighted quite a few of the successful
under the
ones.
radar coming up. I don't know if he's under the radar anymore, but it's Puna Soriano.
Yeah,
kid is a hammer. So I'm excited for him, and we had a couple fights that got pushed off and backed up, so he was supposed to fight on this last one, and we had a couple setbacks that we just wanted to not push him too fast. But man, this kid is super talented.
Yeah, I think he was the first one to get the victory on this most recent Dana White Contender Series fight. I've seen him over at the UFC PI and at your gym quite a few times. Very impressive. Impressive in his last outing too. Any news for an opponent or an upcoming fight? When would you like to see him?
Actually, I just talked to Mick about him over the week, and he just asked me how he's coming along and when do I want to book him again. And I said, hopefully late June, early July. He said, I'm on it. And very interesting backstory. Like Dan and Puna, high school buddies, grew up together. They've known each other forever. Same spot in Hawaii, and now they're both making noise in the UFC, and they're both at our gym and just working their butts off.
When is someone going to make a loud enough noise to get a fight card in Hawaii? Because there's Max Holloway, there's those two. I don't understand.
Brad
Tavares. Another one of these guys.
I can't believe it hasn't happened yet. From what I heard, they just don't have the location that would fit. But we've done a Bellator there. I've done some smaller shows in Hawaii, and the way they come out. I mean, these guys. When you watch these kids fight in the streets, they're like high-level street fights you'll watch on YouTube. They're better than some of the fights you'll see like in amateur levels. So, I mean, the fighting is in their nature. And then at Extreme Couture, we call ourselves Hawaiian Top Team. All the boys in there are pretty much all Hawaiian. So, yeah, they need to do one out there for sure.
Excellent, man. Well, let's wrap it up on this. Final thoughts, final message, anything you want to get out there for everyone listening or watching?
No, I just I can't wait to reopen the gym. Can't wait to get back to work and at a full capacity. And I hope everybody's getting through these trying times. And at the end of the day, I sent Dana a text and just told him, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to work during this time.
Yes.
Provide some income for my family. And I felt what they did was great. There was a lot of questions. There was a lot of questions, I think, about a lot of people, and watching him pull that off, I think, was the light in the darkness that we all needed at times. So it was great.
I sent him the same text on behalf of Helen and I. Just
copy and paste.
Very well said.
Opportunity to cover the sport, to do what we love, to make an income, and to inform the fans. A lot of people appreciate it. I mean, sports are an escape, and it's what people turn to get rid of, just for a couple hours, their worst thoughts and their daily struggles and money and situations like that.
And then, now there's stuff to talk about for the next couple weeks, especially catapulting into what we got coming up at the end of the month. But, I thought they did a great job, and you got to give credit where credit's due. And I hopefully that's the way that paved the way for the rest of these sporting industries and organizations to start doing something, and let's get going.
It's Coach Eric Nicksick, Extreme Couture, Helen Yee Sports, Dave Schmulenson, the Schmo, episode 16, the Schmozone. We are out.